strong pour. Welcome to Tea Time with Juno, except the tea is a classic Cabernet. Normally this is the kind of setting where I would do an Ask Me Anything or something like that, but we're not really there yet, so I think I'm just going to ask myself a few things that I know you guys are just dying to know. The first of which is, how do I afford to travel as much as I do? That is something that I have been asked a lot. And I understand why I'm being asked this question. It's because the travel industry has completely distorted what the notion of travel is, or I guess what it's supposed to be. Back in the day, traveling is all anybody ever did. I mean, that's how we got to where we are today. That being a stabilized society where there are rules and constructs that govern how you are intended or expected to live your life. The notion is that you go to college, you get a job, and that's your kind of bubble that you create for yourself. And you use all of your PTO to go on one super expensive trip every year, which is probably a cruise or whatever it is that people are into these days. This system has made way for companies to completely monopolize travel and what traveling is. And this is where I have adopted something of a self-imbued responsibility to show that you actually don't need that much money to travel. I mean, you get what you pay for, and budget travel is bare bones simply by the nature of it. But I mean, look at what you can get. Like, I decided to come to Costa Rica not more than a few weeks ago. And why Costa Rica, you ask? Well, funny you should ask. I was checking on Skyscanner where the cheapest places to fly would be from Los Angeles at, around these dates that I wanted to go. And Costa Rica was the cheapest on the list as far as other countries go. Funny enough, Costa Rica was not the country I was planning on visiting this year. That was actually going to be Brazil, but plans changed and I was like, okay, I'm not actually going to really be able to afford Brazil because I wanted to do like 3 weeks of it, and it wasn't going to work logistically. So then I was like, okay, well, let's go to the South Dakota Badlands. That was originally where I was going to go around this time, mid-October. And that was actually pretty cheap. Allegiant has some flights there, round-trip flights from LA for $100. Shh, don't tell them I told you. But then I did a little more digging and I was like, hang on a second. That, plus the cost of a rental car, plus the cost of a cabin, plus whatever else. I mean, this is still the US, right? Everything's going to be just drop dead expensive, just no matter which way you want to spin it. For not that much more on flights, I can actually get a different kind of trip with a similar value. So I did a little 180 and I said, well, I guess we're going out of the country this year after all. Cheers to that. My mind is like a Roomba, okay? I'll be perfectly focused on a thought that's very coherent, by the way. And it will be going in a straight line until it hits a wall, or there's a little detour that kind of shows up, right? A little curveball in the road. And so I'm like, okay, great. Ooh, what is going on over in that direction? And then all of a sudden, that train of thought just stops. And so that's just kind of this is how we do things around here, One thing I will say is that I have found that some of my favorite trips were those that were quite spontaneously planned. Because I have learned enough about myself to recognize when it is that I need to get out of town. It is essential for my own mental health, and this is why I promote it for other people, to say, traveling is nothing but good for your soul and for your mind. Because what it allows you to do is it allows you to step outside of your world, even just for a few days. And doing that allows you to kind of look from the outside in at your situation or whatever it is that you are doing in life. And you can gain some new perspective from that. That's why I love it so much. That's why I do it as much as I physically can do it. So I took it upon myself to try to learn how to do it. Budget traveling is not a new concept. I mean, backpackers are all over. You can just Google that shit. and you'll find backpacker anywhere for anything really. For me, it's really about education and highlighting the discrepancies that I see in the current model of the travel industry, of which there are a great many. Remember how I said my mind is like a Roomba? I actually don't even remember what the point of this discussion was. Like, I don't know where we started with this, so I'm just gonna do like a little pivot now, I think. I actually have a post up on how I spent a week in Hawaii for less than $400. That's a place people expect to spend thousands of dollars, but you don't have to. Again, it's going to be a little rocky in some areas. You're probably going to be booking a hostel or whatever. But you can do it, is the whole point, is that option is available. And by, sacrificing a little bit on the comfort of the space, you get to experience a beautiful world that most people only dream about seeing. I mean, Costa Rica, right here, another example. I mean, I have a pretty decent accommodation, but that's mostly because things are a lot cheaper here. Matter of fact, I probably have spent less than $400 overall for everything for this entire trip down here. Costa Rica does have a lot of tourist hotspots like La Fortuna, which is where I'm actually staying. And here, I've noticed that the prices for things like food and coffee, even going to see a waterfall, they charge $20 for that, which is wild to me. I didn't end up going to that, by the way, because that's a scam. But you go to San Jose, the food is just as fresh, the coffee is just as good, the museums are great, but you are paying local prices. That's a more local, more authentic experience of Costa Rican culture. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Rumba. Life is just about moments, right? That's the concept of pura vida, which is so ingrained in Costa Rican culture, is to take a step back and really just acknowledge that life is simply made up of moments, and each moment is small. And so when you put all those small moments together, that creates the experience that shapes your life. It's really just a montage of moments is really what life is. I used to be an active member of the film and media industry. Last year, all of the unions went on strike. The WGA and the SAG went on strike, not all of them. And there just wasn't a lot of work. Things started going real slow for me. So then I started DoorDashing and doing all these delivery odd jobs. And then my car stopped working. So that was great. So then I said, I need a job. So I picked up a survival job at a very popular Seattle-based coffee house chain, which I'm going to refrain from naming, that exists mostly, to pay my bills and to fund some of these trips. But that's why the budgets have been so small, is because I don't make a ton of money, so I'm thinking about it from a budget perspective. I need to be able to travel. How do I budget that? How can I schedule that and make it work logistically that still allows me to get what I want out of where I'm going? And this is one of the smaller reasons why I started Walkathon Wednesday. One thing I learned very quickly after moving to LA back in 2022 was that LA really is a wanderer's wonderland, so to speak, in the sense that you don't actually have to travel that far for it to feel like you are in a completely different world. LA makes traveling so easy. Like, you can go from Santa Monica over to downtown LA, down to Huntington Park, down to Anaheim, and it's like you just went to a bunch of different places in the same day, right? Like, Walkathon Wednesday. Oh, there, I gotta be careful now. Walkathon Wednesday is my approach to showing that in a somewhat organized fashion that I think has been mostly successful. Little inside scoop on the current Walkathon Wednesday series, don't tell anybody. Each walk is going to have a specific theme that is going to pay homage to some film genres across history. Like, I'm trying to really spice up the storytelling aspect of it, because one thing I learned really from doing the Spirit of Adventure special over on Catalina Island is that I actually really miss my filmmaking days. Like I said, I used to be really active in that community, Now I am not so much, but I see an opportunity to bring some of that back and to incorporate it with the Walkathon Wednesday project. So you guys are going to see a lot more stylistic approaches to how I do the walks going forward, as I try to think of more creative presentations that I just think are going to be more interesting to watch. What else do you guys want to know? Go ahead, lay it on me. You know what? As a matter of fact, ask me a question you want me to answer in the next tea time. If we do another tea time, I don't know, is this like something that you guys would watch? Like, do you like just watching me sit here and talk to myself while drinking alcoholic beverages? Because I can drink an alcoholic beverage or two and still hold a conversation. Don't quote me on that. Yes. Oh. The night is young. The only thing that could make this more perfect is if a toucan were to land right behind me. That would just be, oh, that would be amazing. Mwah. Chef's kiss. It's not going to happen, though, because it's raining like hell out here. You guys want to know a little secret? For a long time, I held out hope that I would eventually become an active member of the film industry again. I would start getting gigs, and that was just going to be my life again. But then I started to realize it's not really for me, is it? I want to be a travel blogger. Like, this is my work that has only ever been a side quest. This is going to be my full-time work. Woo! I swallowed that a little too fast. I know I kind of touched on a lot of these things during my Spirit of Adventure walk. But I mean, the fact is, like, I'm just doing my own thing. What is your thing? Okay? Because once you find what that is, everything else just kind of falls into place the way it's supposed to. Because that's your thing. That's what your place in the ecosystem is. Am I just spouting nonsense because I'm, like, kind of tipsy? I don't know. If this is how our tea times are gonna go, like, I am on board. One thing that I have conditioned myself to doing is to not say goodbye. And that's because I have always believed that, you know, you should always keep your doors open. But then I realized that just because you close a door doesn't mean you can't open it again. I mean, there's not that much effort. When I moved out of Atlanta, for example, I tried not to say goodbye to my friends that I made there. It was, see you later. Insinuating that at a certain time in the future, I would see you again. But something I've learned as of late is that closure is kind of an illusion, because it creates this false expectation that every single loose end in your life, every single open door will eventually close. But we know that's not true. When you build that expectation in your mind, you set yourself up for disappointment. It is okay to close those doors, and in some cases, that is the preferred choice because you decide whether or not to open that door again. But for all intents and purposes, you're satisfied, you can move on with your life, you don't have all these, you know, theoretical ideas clouding it. You've got all these open doors. Oh no, which one do I go through? It doesn't matter. Whether or not you end up opening the door again is not relevant. It is okay to say goodbye. Cheers to that. Yeah. Well, that's the end of this TED Talk. I'll remind you guys that I did not pay more than a commercial PA's day rate for this. So, there you go. Ah.